Hey, Adrienne, it's Matt.
Hi,
Um,
Matt.
hey, so let's start at the beginning of your career. There's a lot that you played Rizzo in Grease, and then you transitioned to Maud on TV. How did you make that transition, and what was it like working with B. Arthur?
Well, the mod came about because of Grease. I was nominated for a Tony, and Norman Lear's casting director read about it or heard about it, and so she called me in. Norman was in New York auditioning, I guess, or interviewing, and he called me in, and but they had already done the pilot for Maud, and they had used another actress to play Maud's daughter, and they were needing to replace her. She didn't want to move to California, whatever. And so, but she was established as having a 7-year-old son. So I went in and met with Norman, and we had a lovely meeting. And then he said, I'm sorry, you just don't look old enough to have a 7-year-old son. I go, okay, fine, I'll go back and do Grease. I mean, it's not a bad choice. And then about a month later, they called and asked me to fly to LA, and they wanted to see me on tape, and they hired me from that. So Grease led to Maud, led to everything else.
How was the transition from stage to TV?
Rough for me. I had never watched TV. I barely. I'd been working on at night since I was 15, doing theater, and wasn't a real big moviegoer, and I had just come off of this role, on stage that was big and larger than life, and it took me about 6 weeks of filming on Maud to understand that they had hired me pretty much because they saw something in me that was right for the character, and I didn't have to create a bigger character, or I didn't have to do as much. We did a what did they call it? A telethon on the show, where suddenly I was singing and dancing, which was all I really knew, and suddenly okay, now I get it. I relaxed, and from then on it was okay. But it was not an easy transition for me.
You get involved in making movies?
No, never. In fact, even when I, just realized that people could act for a living, I never had no interest in acting on film. I mean, all I knew was stage. I had done community theater and high school productions, and and I thought Los Angeles was a flesh market, whatever that was. I didn't know what it was really, but I didn't think I should be there. And so I just went to New York and tried to get on stage.
So how did you get involved with making films with John Carpenter?
John had seen, I think John had seen me in Maud. And I think he realized that I played the kind of characters that he liked to write. The strong, the Howard Hawks woman who's strong and funny. And my agent just sent over a script and said, there's this young, film director just getting started, but he's doing this thing and he'd like to interview you for the role. And so I went in and we just chatted. I don't think I read for him. We just chatted, and he hired me.
Can you talk a little bit about that first role in The Fog, where you basically spend most of the film on your own?
Well, it was a great role. And it was a wonderful film to be doing. We were all, the cast and crew were all very close. John hired people that he had worked with before, that were his friends, that he knew could do what he wanted them to do. And being in Inverness and Point Reyes, the California seashore, was was a dream. We ended up buying a house there. It's such a gorgeous part of the country. I never really thought about the fact that I was working by myself in almost all my scenes. I mean, I do have the scenes with Ty Mitchell, my boy, my son. Even the scenes with Chuck Cyphers were shot individually because Chuck was in another place. We were talking on the phone. But I mean, I never thought about it at the time. It was just, she was a great character and it was a great place to be. And I had a great director.
How would you describe John's directing style?
Very low key. Now, it's been years since we worked together, but I remember him as being very low key. He kept a very happy set, you know. He knew what he wanted. He knew exactly what he wanted. We had one disagreement the entire, all of the films that I did with him. And it was on The Fog, and it was in the scene right after the piece of driftwood has caught fire, and you know, and I've had to put it out and all of that. And John said, okay, sit down and we'll start shooting. And I said, sit down? Oh, John, I don't think she'd sit down. She's too upset. And he said, okay, stand up and we'll start shooting. And that was the end of it. He didn't, people have asked me about Harry Dean in Escape. He didn't, at that time at least, he didn't abide improvisation. The words were on the script. He wrote the words, or somebody else just as talented wrote them with him. And those were the words you said, which is fine with me because I wasn't interested in improvising.
Did you have any apprehension about working in the genre of horror?
No, I didn't know enough to have any apprehension about it. It was my first movie offer. In those days, if you were doing television, you couldn't get hired for a film. You know, they didn't think anybody would pay in the movie theater if they could see you for free on TV. So, hey, I mean, she was a great character. I knew the director. I trusted the director. Never crossed my mind. And I don't know that, I mean, maybe there was a stigma about doing horror in those days. I don't know. I wasn't really aware of it. I was just working.
Mm-hmm. You went on to do a ton of voice work later on in your career. Do you attribute that to your role as Stevie Wayne in The Fog?
That may have had something to do with it, yeah. My older son had just been born, Cody Carpenter, and I didn't want to work full time. And I was approached by an agent at William Morris who had heard me on $20,000 Pyramid. And she said, I think you've got a great voice for commercials and animation and stuff like that, you know? So, okay. And so I started. I did a lot of books on tape. I did Catwoman, of course, in Batman. That Stevie Wayne voice I've used several more times in other films because that's what they wanted. And these days, when I'm not acting, I do video describing for the blind, so that when you're watching your television, if you put your SAP channel on, you'll hear my voice telling you what's going on in between dialogue. So from a voice that I always thought was, you know, when you're working with B. Arthur, I mean, you don't think your voice sounds very appealing. I always thought it was sort of high. Well, I started out as a lyric soprano, so it has, you know, lowered in the years, but it has served me and continues to serve me in good stead.
What was it like for the character of Maggie in Escape from New York? I mean, Stevie Wayne was a very strong female lead, but Maggie was tough. Like, she was, you know, grizzled. What did you bring to the table, and what did John give you direction for to bring her to life?
Well, again, I don't remember him ever giving me any direction. He wrote the role with me in mind. So, you know, I'm already 90% there. Then you put the costume on and you put the boots on. And what I did bring to the role was my hair clip, which was a turkey bone, because I decided, they're in a maximum secure. I mean, they're on an island and they can't get anything. So I cooked a turkey and I took the breastbone and I made a clip to hold my hair up. And I think I decided to wear silver nail polish because I thought, oh, I could melt down batteries or something. But what I love about Maggie is her morality, which you see very clearly in that last scene where Brain gets killed and Maggie reaches out her hand for the gun from Snake, and she does what she can to avenge his death. But that was on the page,
Do you know if John? Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, do you know if John had pulled any inspiration from Alien, because Ripley had just come out? Alien had just come out with Ellen Ripley, a few years prior, or did he just think you can bring this type of role and really make her stand out?
I've never heard any reference to Alien. Was it out before Escape from New York?
Yeah, it came out in '79.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I have no idea. I don't think so.
I have to ask you, working with such an ensemble cast and a bunch of legendary actors on Escape from New York, one of my favorites all time, Harry Dean Stanton. Can you talk about working alongside him a little bit?
The only thing I really remember about Harry Dean is that Harry Dean did like to improvise. And I seem to remember once or twice when John had to say, Harry, just stay with the words, or maybe he let him do it. I don't remember. I mean, he was great to work with. They were all, I had the least to do with Isaac Hayes, but I just remember him being a real gentleman. He was just a real nice, gentle man. And Donald Pleasance, of course, just had me laughing so hard sometimes that I couldn't get into a scene because I'd have to tell him to stop the cameras because Donald just said something that his sense of humor was that dry British delivery just had me on the floor all the time.
How about Ernest Borgnine? He always seemed like he was fun to be around.
Ernie was a great guy. Ernie was preparing a one-man show at the time, and he was anxious that he wasn't going to be able to memorize an hour and a half worth of monologue, to go on stage. So he spent a lot of his off time just working on his lines. I remember seeing him sitting in the lobby, and he was always just memorizing the lines. But I got to know him better when my first book, the memoir, came out. And Ernie was doing the book signing circuit with his book. And he was a good man, too. They all were. John hired good people.
Absolutely.
I think just in the interest of time, we're going to kind of jump to Creepshow and then maybe backtrack. But can you talk about first hearing about Creepshow, and were you familiar with George Romero?
I was not familiar with George Romero. My agent sent me the script for Creepshow, and I read it, and I said, I'm not doing this. This is really gross. I mean, it's vile. It's like bloody and no. And John is saying to me, do you know who George Romero is? Are you kidding? You're going to turn down an opportunity to, you've got to watch Night of the Living Dead. I've never seen horror films in my life, And then I called Tom Atkins, who had already been cast. I said, Tommy, you're doing this thing? I mean, it's really, oh God, Adrienne, you don't get it at all. It's going to be very stylized. It's a comic book. It's going to be, you got to do it. Okay, I'll do it. And I think I showed up in Pittsburgh, and I went to George and I said, you know, I'm going to do what I am going to do, but if it's not right, you should send me home because I'm not sure about this at all. Because in the first place, I don't drink. I've never drunk. I don't like it. I've never liked the taste of it. So I've never been drunk. I didn't know what that was like. And but it turned out to be, you know, one of the things I'm happiest about and proudest of, I think. Thanks to George, because my direction up until then, doing a feature, had been, you know, keep it small. It's a movie. Keep it small. Do less. Do less. And George just kept pushing me. No, you can be bigger. You can be bigger. And I went, oh God, you know. And then I finally thought, well, you know what? He's the director, and if I really have look like a fool, I got to go with what George wants. So I just kept taking it bigger. The only thing I brought to it is the milk in the scotch, or the scotch in the milk. I don't remember how I did it. When I first went to New York, I was working in a bar as a discotheque dancer. And the owner of the bar had an ulcer, and he used to drink scotch and milk. And so I thought that was really odd, but I used it for Billy.
Was it cathartic to just kind of release like that as Billy?
Oh gosh. I think it was fun. I don't remember. I mean, we're going back a lot of years.
I also wanted to ask about working with Hal Holbrook. What was that like?
Hal was again, you know, the ultimate professional and a real gentleman. And I remember the first day he came into rehearsal, he had on cowboy boots, which I thought was really cool because that's all I ever wore. And both he and Fritz, I really loved Fritz too. He was a sweetheart. But both of them they were great to work with. I mean, Hal had been in The Fog, but we had no scenes together. And I don't know that we were ever even in Inverness at the same time. But it was great.
How did you handle the climactic scene where there's special effects involved and there's a creature? That was all new to you. How did you work with that?
I don't remember. I just acted. I just acted. You're going to be scared. You're going to be scared. Or you know, people ask me, was it an animatronic? Was it a man in a dummy suit? I don't know. I don't remember. You guys probably know more about it than I do. I'm sorry.
Another thing I'm noticing is that you've been in a few films with Tom Atkins, but you haven't shared a lot of screen time. Have you shared a scene with the man yet?
We've never shared a scene. And you know what? I've got a film that is being, well, it's I don't want to say it's in post-production. It's still in production. They started it before the pandemic, and now they're just picking up again. And Tommy just emailed me to say, well, I just got an offer to do this, you know, we still don't have any scenes together. I don't know. But I used Tommy in my second novel, in Love Bites. I used Tommy Atkins as himself, you know, as one of the characters in my second novel. So I'm hoping if we go to series, at least I won't be in it. I'm too old to be in it now, but he can play himself on this in the series.
Well, it's kind of funny because today is Tom's birthday.
I know it is. I know it is.
And it's always great to talk about Tom, but you know,
yes, it is.
And that kind of leads us into Two Evil Eyes, the George and Dario collaboration. Right. What can you talk about your part?
I don't remember much, honestly. In fact, Tom was in that But I guess we didn't have any scenes together either, did we? I don't know.
He was
I
in
mean,
the second segment.
I
wasn't
think
he in? No, no,
I,
no. I
there
thought
was
Was
he
some
he?
crossover, but I don't.
Was
Yeah, I don't think you guys shared screen time.
Yeah.
But there, he was made an appearance in both stories.
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, but we didn't share any screen time.
Hmm.
You know, mostly what I remember about doing Two Evil Eyes is that I had Cody with me, and he was only 5. And my housekeeper couldn't travel with us, and I didn't have the sense to try and find somebody else who could come with me and take care of him. So it was me and Cody. Fortunately, we were working nights, and we were in a huge mansion. So 6 o'clock every night, Cody and I would go to the set. Whenever I wasn't working, I'd hang out with him in the bedroom, you know, playing Legos or whatever we were doing. When I was working, one of the PAs would hang out with him. We'd have lunch at 1 in the morning, and then I'd put him to sleep. And then I'd take him home at 6 in the morning, and we'd both sleep until about 10, and then he'd wake up. So I just remember being really sleepy and feeling guilty because I had to set him in front of the TV and watch cartoons so I could take a nap before I went to bed, went to work again. That was my memory of Two Evil Eyes.
Well, that is something I don't think I knew about the shoot. I didn't realize it was an overnight or a
Most
night
of it was
shoot.
at night, yeah. At
Hmm.
least that's, yeah. I mean, there must have been days too, but that's what I remember because I remember, like, oh God, I'm getting home at 6.
Yeah.
I can sleep till 10, but now he's going to be waking up. And I was just stupid. You know, why didn't I bring somebody with me, even though it wasn't somebody that I don't know. Anyway.
I think in both of George's films and definitely in Escape from New York as well, you handled firearms. Is that something you've, I don't know, is that anything you have issue with? You know, and it's kind of strange now that I mention it with just this recent Alec Baldwin deal situation. But yeah,
Well, I am definitely against guns, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But and everyone I've ever handled, I've been on a set and I've learned how to use it. I did a film called The Convent, and we were using these huge M16s or something, you know. But I've just learned for the roles.
Do you have any memories of working with Tom Savini at all? With any of the effects? This was somewhat heavy effects segment with Voldemort.
I'm sorry. I mean, I see Tom. You know, we do the conventions, and it's always great to see him. But it's going back too far.
It's so strange. Well, you've had a chance to work with George Romero, John Carpenter, Wes Craven. You've almost covered the 4
Greg
masters of
Nicotero.
horror.
I got to work with Greg Nicotero. Yeah, I've been very fortunate. Really fortunate.
Did you ever have any close calls to where you maybe had a chance to work with Tobe Hooper?
No. I did have a chance to work with. Oh no, and I did work with him. I did a scene, but it got cut. Who directed the Halloween with
Rob Zombie?
Rob Zombie with Rob.
That's right.
I had an earlier chance to work with Rob Zombie when I was sent the screenplay for The Devil's Rejects. And I made it through 10 pages. I called my agent and I said, there's no way, man, I'm not doing this one. And then about a year later, I was at a convention and Bill Moseley was there and he was signing. He had a line of people signing out the block. I said, Bill, what are you doing? This is great. What, you know? He said, oh, I did this movie called The Devil's Rejects. That
Yep.
was, that would have been a stipend for the rest of my life. But, but then when Rob called and asked me to do, it was just a scene in that Halloween with Malcolm, I was happy to do it. And then he called me the day they were going to premiere it. And he said, "Are you going to the premiere tonight?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, because I'm sorry, but we just didn't have enough time, and your scene is on the floor." But yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some. Plus, I've worked with oh my God, Argo, Ben Affleck.
Oh, Ben
I got to
Affleck.
work
Yeah.
in Argo, and I've worked with some good people, and they've made me better.
Yeah. What's a role that surprises you that people come up to you and talk to you the most about that you wouldn't expect?
But I wouldn't expect. Well, I'm always joyful when someone comes up and says, "I loved Carnival. Is it coming back?" When it's not. And I guess it does surprise me sometimes that because there's so many Carnival fans out there. And if somebody says they've seen The Convent, oh, I know. Occasionally somebody will come up and say, I just watched Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. Not too much surprises me. I mean, if you're into horror, you're probably going to come across some of the ones that I hope you never see.
Well, Eric kind of touched on it. You worked with Wes Craven in Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about Swamp Thing a little bit? Because I think that kind of gets glossed over with all the other prominent roles that you've taken on.
Swamp Thing was a hard shoot. It was made harder by the fact that the studio kept undercutting the budget. And so Wes had to throw out entire scenes. He had to do a lot of rewriting. He had to eliminate characters. We were working long hours. They weren't paying the bills. We showed up one day. There was no makeup trailer because they hadn't paid the bills. There were a lot of drugs on the set. A couple people went to jail. It was not an easy shoot. Plus, it was in South Carolina in the heat with the chiggers and the ticks and the alligators. I didn't know then that alligators can run that fast, or I might have been a little more anxious. The guys thought it was great fun to throw a snake over my shoulders. The swamp was polluted. They had to put antibiotic pads in our ears when we went in, and then once we got out, just really had to wash us down. And so it was not an easy shoot. Mr. Jourdain's son had just died, so he never, he didn't come out of his trailer except when time came to film. And it just wasn't, for me at least, a happy experience. The fact that the film has done so well and that so many people still love it is a tribute to Wes. I say that all the time. He made it happen, but it wasn't easy.
Did you ever have a chance to, or any close calls with working with George again?
Not that I can remember. He gave me 2 books when we first met that he was interested in doing. Both of them. One of them is still one of my favorites. I mean, it was the first vampire novel I ever read. It was George R.R. Martin, actually, Fever Dream. And I never read another one until I had to do research for my vampire novels. But I love that book. And then he gave me a book by Marcia Norman called Mother. It's about a woman who was psychic. I can't remember. But he wanted to get those going, but I obviously didn't. And I don't remember, I don't think there was anything else that we might have done together, although I know I mean, I would have gone anywhere to work with him, and at any time, like tomorrow. And I think he felt the same. I mean,
Matt, I think that's a good. Unless you have another one, I think that's a pretty good stopping point.
No, I was just going to say, I was on my way to.
Oh, sorry.
I was on my way to a wrap party for a film I did called The Chain. I was just leaving the house and my phone rang, and it was Tom Atkins telling me that George had passed. One of the saddest days of my life. Never got to the party. I didn't get to see him all the time, but he was always there, and he was sort of, and the strange thing was when I read his obituary, I realized he was only a handful of years older than I was, but in my mind, George was Dad, he was the father, he was this big teddy bear, he was the father figure, the dad, the pop. None of those words are right, but it was an enormous loss.
That's true. Yeah, it was. Absolutely. Matt?
Is that enough?
Yeah.
No, you talking about George got me a little emotional. Sorry. That always gets me because, we wish he was still here and he had done so much for all of us. And but he left a great legacy. We're so appreciative that, you got to work with him and John and Wes. You've given fans so much with all your roles. It's,
well, I've got some more coming up.
I was going to say, you've got more to give.
Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
And Unearth is streaming right now. Did that one right before the pandemic with Mark Lucas. And have another book coming out I co-wrote about Grease. Grease, tell me more. Collection of stories from all the original actors who did the Broadway show and the National Company and the Bus and Truck Company, and it's really good. It's really good. That'll be out next summer, I think. So
that was something I didn't think of. Did they ever approach any of the original cast for the movie?
Well, Jeff Conaway, who was an understudy on Broadway, I think he's in the movie, isn't he? I've never seen the movie, but Jeff is in the movie. And nobody else from the original cast. Barry Pearl was in one of the companies, I'm not sure which, and he's in the movie. I don't know about the others because I never saw it. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for taking some. Thank you. And Sue says thank you too. She really appreciates you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day.
Sure. Give Sue my love.